Prepare yourself to be blown away by the seismic sounds and scrutiny of Aftershocks Podcast with Chris Aiken and Matt Hartnett.
All right, it is Aftershocks podcast number 2 of Aftershocks. It's me, Chris Aiken. I don't know where Matt is, but that's all right because I don't know that I need Matt when I've got this guy on the line with us. He is the main man, I guess, of the band WITCHSKULL, a band that I'm going to be perfectly honest, I just discovered here in the last couple of weeks, but it has quickly become one of my favorites, playing that solid style of just heavy, doomy metal with a tinge of a modern flavor, but mostly if you liked Black Sabbath but you wanted to see progression, that is what I would call WITCHSKULL. And on the line right now we've got Joel Green. Joel, how are you, man?
Hey, really good, thanks, Chris. Thanks for having us.
Sure. Well, Joel, as I said, I didn't know of WITCHSKULL, probably because you guys are about, 10,000 miles away from me to where I haven't run into you at a club. But for those that are not initiated to WITCHSKULL, why don't we start there with you maybe giving us a little history of the band and how you guys came to be.
Yeah, okay. I'll try and be quick. Marcus, the guitarist and singer, we're a three-piece, but Marcus and I went through school together, so we've known each other since we were 8 years old and played in speed metal bands when we were 15. Marcus has a cousin, Caroline. She moved to New York and married a guy called Tony. Tony came back to Canberra, and so the only person Tony knew was Caroline's cousin, which was Marcus. So that's how the three of us got together. And, we started in 2014, and this is our third album and the second one to come out through Rise Above.
Sure. Now, you guys definitely play a style of metal that is, I would say is on the rebound. It was huge in the early 90s, and then it sort of went away, at least here in the States. Then it died down for a while, and now it has come back in the last 5 years or so with a vengeance, which probably is like perfect timing for the forming of your band, no?
Yeah, it's hard to know. Like, the three of us are older, so we sort of, all of our influences are like, Sabbath, Motorhead, Priest, that sort of thing, Venom and all the old school stuff, you know what I mean? But as well as even older stuff going back to Deep Purple and Zeppelin. So for us, we were always going to sound like we sound just because of those influences that were the same for all of us. I suppose in some ways it's kind of maybe a little just bit lucky that the style of stuff we do, there's been a more of an interest in it over the last couple of years. So, yeah, luck, I guess.
Sure. Now, let's talk about the current release, A Driftwood Cross. What an amazing, before I even get into the music of it, what an amazing sound you guys have captured. Talk about a huge sound. It's got the cool fuzzy guitars, but yet it's very clean. Everything about it sounds very big, for lack of a better term. How was it that you guys captured such a big sound on what I'm going to consider is a live-ish recording?
Look, thanks so much. That means a lot to us because that's definitely where we come from. Everything's just been recorded live, and then Marcus just goes in and does an additional guitar or two and the vocals afterwards. But all of the beds are done completely live without click tracks and whatnot. So we made sure this time around we went to a studio specifically designed for pulling big, good drum sounds. So all of the beds were done in a studio called Toyland in Melbourne. And after the beds were laid, we moved back to Goat Sound, which is the studio and producer that we work with have done for all three records. So I suppose it was just about trying to capture a live sort of groove but focus on trying to pull the best sounds we can in an analog sense by, no sound replacing or sampling,
Definitely. And Jason Fuller, I know his name from Blood Duster, but wow, what a production guy he is, huh?
He's absolutely amazing. Like, we did that first album we did with him. We just went down to maybe do an EP, a couple of songs, and we ended up recording 12 and releasing 8 songs on that first album in a few days. For a cost of only like $2,800 or something. Okay. So, I just, I love that record. I love the sound of it. It's so raw. And the fact that we captured that kind of sound for that sort of money in that time frame has a hell of a lot to do with Jason's sort of ability. He's really good at mixing. I think there's a bit of a lost art of mixing these days because everything's so crushed and squashed. You don't have that sort of finding instruments to sit in pockets, and I think he's managed to sort of do that on all of the records and just keep things sounding really organic.
Sure, and that's one of the really, really nice things about A Driftwood Cross is that when you listen to it, like my first listen to it, I'll be honest, was on the computer through computer speakers, and it sounded cool. It sounded cool like everything else sounds cool. But the minute I put on some headphones and really got to listen to it, man, you pick up so many nuances in the playing, kind of the way the bass plays off the drums and the way the guitars, kind of rip through the sound, and the vocal doesn't feel overlaid as much as it feels like an equal instrument to the part. And I don't know if I'm doing a good job or a terrible job of explaining this, but it just sounds so good in headphones.
Man, I think you described it really well because that was the process that we went through to make the record. It was really important for us to try and create things more organically than I've got some personal sort of issues with the way modern music is made, and it's nothing to do with the bands or the songwriting. The bands are great and the songs are great, but I think we've got this obsession with trying to make things perfect and machine-like, and it actually is detrimental to the listener because the listener just hears these snares that are sampled and at the exact same intensity with each hit, and your brain gets fatigued and switches off. So you'll hear errors and mistakes through all of our records, but that's what humans do when they play, And I just think that we need to stop focusing, in my opinion, on precision and just focus a bit more on groove and letting things kind of breathe a bit more,
Sure. And what's interesting by you saying that, if you look at the bands that are arguably the best bands of all time, whether it would be a Black Sabbath, an AC/DC, Led Zeppelin, whatever, pick a band other than the Beatles, who really went crazy, in the studio, but all the others kind of let their mistakes breathe and be part of the music. I mean, Led Zeppelin especially, I cannot even imagine if Led Zeppelin would have recorded a clean album. It would have been terrible.
Look, I totally agree. And obviously you can hear not mistakes with AC/DC, but you feel that groove is natural. Phil Rudd's my favorite drummer of all time. He never used click tracks. He's exceptional about laying down the fattest, toughest swinging grooves ever, and same as Bonham maybe. But you know what I mean? They were more focused on actually creating a groove as opposed to creating perfection. And that's the thing. It doesn't matter. Like, as a drummer, I've spent more time, as I'm getting older, trying to be as even as I can with my snare hits while I'm tracking, so that you don't have to try and manipulate those to after the fact. So it's just allowing things to breathe more, and it's just what I like. I just think it's easier for us because we're older guys and we don't have a lot of the baggage that maybe some younger bands are forced to carry.
Sure. And as a failed drummer and a really not good drummer, I can tell you for a fact that if you end up playing perfect, you end up getting replaced by a drum machine anyway. So it's much better these days that you play from the heart instead of playing perfect.
Yeah, well, that's how we approach things. We're aware of you have to have pretty solid drum tracks laid down to make things, an album, if it's got poor drum takes and poor drum sounds, you can't really get away from that. So I'm very lucky that the guys in the band are very believe that sort of ethos as well. But we consider it to be the beds. So we do the rhythm guitar, bass, and drums all live, all at once. And then if there's a mistake, we just try the song again. But, some songs like This Silent Place that we just did the video for, that was the only take. We didn't even do another take in the studio. So that was weird, because we'd only finished the song a week before. We'd only played it a few times, and then all of a sudden that's the first single, and that was the only time we played it.
Now, whose decision was that for it to be the first single, Rise Above's, or was it the one that you guys liked the best, or?
It's a couple of things. It's really different for us, and we just thought, you know what I mean, because we don't answer to anyone, we just thought, well, let's put it out there. But it was also, we were very pushed for time with, for when the album was coming out, that we went for one of the shorter songs. So it was either going to be the second song or the third song, because they just happened to be the shorter ones.
Sure.
In the end, we just decided to go with something that was completely different to what we've normally done, just because we can.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, talking about the album, which is called A Driftwood Cross for people that need to look it up, which is all of you. It's kind of, I don't want to say stylistically all over the map, but certainly it covers a lot of different ground. You have some really big, doomy, slow songs, but then at the same time you have faster stuff like Nero's Order, or even some more easily consumable stuff like Baphomet's Child as an example. Very, very catchy, very, you hear it one time and it it's the proverbial bubble gum in your hair song that just kind of that groove sticks with you. Do you guys naturally write a lot of different styles, or is that just where you were when you were creating this music, that you were trying some different styles and different phrasing and stuff to come up with these songs?
Yeah, we spend most of our time jamming ideas, so we don't tend to bring songs to the rehearsal space. Okay. A lot of stuff comes from just purely jamming, so that there's not even a riff there. And then what sometimes happens is Marcus will come up with a really good melody line, and then we know, hey, that vocal line really works. We want to stick with that. And then sometimes the riffs get written around the vocal line. So there's different ways. Some songs write quickly, some are longer, but we tend to not try and finish the arrangement. We let the songs breathe in the rehearsal space for as long as it takes, until all of a sudden we realize we've played the song the same way a few times, so we realize that the arrangement is complete. So it's always kept really open-ended and organic, and you can generally hear if the song needs something more or not if you live with them for long enough. So that's why I think it probably has a bit of an organic kind of feel to it, because they're written and recorded in a very organic sort of manner.
So then the creative process then is very collaborative. It's definitely not lead guy and two guys that follow one guy, correct?
It's very collaborative. Like, without a doubt, Marcus would bring the vast majority of riffs, and he also brings, all of the melodies. But there's definitely a thing that Tony and I do as a rhythm section that will often be very different to what Marcus's original idea may have been. So we sound as we sound because of all three of us being involved. But obviously we're very lucky. Look, Tony writes amazing riffs as well. So I think we're lucky on that front, and I contribute riffs from time to time, not as many as the other guys, but the fact that all of us have that involvement and all of us can play sort of, I play guitar pretty poorly, but Tony's originally a guitarist, So with three of us being able to contribute ideas, it means we're never kind of short on sort of ideas to sort of begin writing.
Sure. I got to tell you, man, that's the formula for a band staying together for a long time. The fact that everybody feels like an equal partner and nobody feels like they're being dragged along.
Absolutely. You know, we sort of grew up in the era where the Motorhead song, you know, all the Motorhead records were Kill Mr. Clark Taylor. Now, I'm guessing Filthy didn't write, you know, anywhere near as much as the other two. But I remember them once saying, we can't be turning up to rehearsals in Rolls Royces and Filthy turning up on his push bike. So we had to credit everyone the same. But you're right. I think if you have that sort of camaraderie, and we're more like a brotherhood, because we feel like brothers. I've been friends with Marcus since I was 8 years old. We fight like brothers. We hang out like brothers. You know what I mean? We can say anything to each other, and there's a connection between all three of us that's stronger than just three dudes in a band. You know what I mean? And at this age, it's even better because we're not trying to change the world. We're only trying to do what suits us, and it doesn't really matter to us if people don't like it because we just do what the three of us like, and we're lucky to have a label like Rise Above support us and let us be whoever we are, you know.
No question. Now, I did read in your press, so I'm gonna take that for whatever that's worth, because I know how these press releases sometimes are written without you guys knowing anything that's in them. But it says that a lot of times Marcus comes into the music with lyrics that are very deep in meaning, and a lot of times you have no idea what he's writing about. Is that true? And B, if that is true, are you comfortable with that, or is it just easier to go with it than to try and decipher if what he's saying is what you would want to say musically?
Look, that's very true. I think Marcus is an unbelievably unique talent. There's no two ways about it. I think the style of his voice, the melodies he comes up with, and the way, not just the melody, but the way he phrases them, as well as the way he plays guitar and the way he phrases his guitar. He's a kind of really sort of eclectic mix between Hendrix and Page, yet he's just got this sort of punk or real feralness to his playing that just makes him really unique. He's got a looseness like Page, but he can play like, you know, you don't often hear it on the albums, especially on this new album. There's very little, for whatever reason, just the way we were writing, there was less really full-on leads on it. But, man, he does things in the rehearsal space that just beg a belief. He's just an unbelievable player and an incredible talent. So when he writes lyrics, and they're very unique as well, you know, sometimes he sort of tells us where he's coming from, but other times we've got no idea. And, you know, I never question it or sort of say, hey, that word's a bit weird. You know, it's just however he interprets what he's trying to say. He says a lot of it's abstract and just comes from sort of different thoughts, and when he writes them, he does it purely off the cuff and doesn't spend too much time agonizing over lines. They just naturally flow out of him in a sub or unconscious sort of thought pattern, and it just works. He's just, you know, he's trippy. It's really worth reading. It's great for us when me and Tony finally sit back and read the lyrics and kind of go, oh, is that what you're saying? I didn't even know that's – or what does that mean? And sometimes he'll tell us, and sometimes he goes, I don't know, it just came out and it just really fits and it means something, but I don't know what. So I like that. Marcus sorry to interrupt you. I won't go, but Marcus also says with songs he feels like a band is just a conduit. He believes that it's out there, and you just have to channel that through the energy you have as a band playing. Sure. Now, whether it's true or not, I like to sort of think that concept is true. So you just kind of roll with it and see what happens.
Absolutely. Are you as a band comfortable with the constant comparison that everybody is going to throw at you of Black Sabbath? You know, because on the one hand, obviously there's no greater compliment a band could have in doing what you do than to be compared to Black Sabbath. At the same time, it also puts a lot of undue comparison to you, because it doesn't allow people, at least in my mind, it doesn't allow people to fully judge what you're doing. And I've always said this, not just about your band, about any band compared to any other band that's had huge success. When you get constant comparisons to it, people will only compare until you don't sound like that song that they like. And then they stop and they write you off as not as good versus just accepting what you do for what you do.
Yeah, look, it doesn't worry me. There's no band that can ever exist ever again that is as good as Black Sabbath. It's just not possible. Iommi's riffs are like McCartney and Lennon's melodies. You know what I mean? Like, everyone was brilliant. How do you do that? It's just, so they're the absolute forefathers of, metal. They started it. They were the best at it. We've been described a lot of ways. One that I thought was interesting, I once heard somebody say, it's like if Motorhead were playing Sabbath, but with the rhythm section of early AC/DC. Now, not that we're as good in any way as any of those bands, but it sort of shows that we have the simplicity of our rhythm section mixed with the feral chaos and mongrel of Motorhead playing Sabbath riffs. So if you kind of blend all of that together, for me personally, they're the three greatest musical entities of all time. So if someone's going to compare you to those three, then that's not a bad way to go.
Exactly. Could have been a lot worse. They could have said you had the look of Poison and the sound of, I don't know, Motley Crue or something. Could have gone.
Those options would have been way worse.
No question, man. Well, Joel, I am a big fan, and I'm encouraging everybody to check out A Driftwood Cross. It is the latest release from WITCHSKULL. When does it come out exactly?
It comes out Friday your time, so I think that's Saturday here. What day is it today? What day is it? Oh, it's Thursday, so it's Wednesday there. So I think Friday US time it comes out.
Okay, excellent. Well, people should definitely check it out. It is an album that is absolutely killer. And I'll tell you what, man, to wrap this one up, why don't you pick a song and we'll play a little piece of it to take people out, and maybe tell us a quick story about it.
Look, maybe have a listen to This Silent Place. That's what we've done the new video for. And again, it's just interesting that was the only take we did of the song. Every other track had an additional version or so, but this one we played once. We didn't think it was going to even possibly make the record, and it's the first release. And it's probably the most different sounding song we've ever done. So yeah, maybe have a listen and see what people think.
All right, well, let's check it out right now. It's WITCHSKULL right here on Aftershocks.
Thanks for listening to Aftershocks. For more episodes, go to our website at www.aftershockspodcast.com. Visit us on our Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter pages for more news and information on the podcast. And be sure to subscribe, listen to, and review all episodes on YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and all other podcast platforms. For your music listening pleasure, visit our website or go to www.shockwavesradio.com. For all comments and questions, please email us at info@aftershockspodcast.com.